YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to another Kamen Rider Gotchard check-in. Today we are going to be sort of reviewing Kamen Rider Wind's debut. We got another Kamen Rider just kind of shoehorned in there. I expected the next video to be Platinum Gotchard, which will be next week it looks like. But they debuted a new rider in the middle of this. And as such, I will be talking about that and the episode, but also talking about some of the surrounding stuff. You know, I didn't check in all that long ago when we debuted Iron Gotchard, and all this really happened is we've done this Iron Gotchard, like Iron Gotchard makes me tired type of stuff with Hoto, which, you know, I'm glad it's not a out of control form, but like the tired form is kind of the second to that. I wish we could just, I don't know, come up with a different reason for these slight evolutions. Like, they're obviously trying to come up with a reason why they need this new power-up and give a reason to have two power-ups, but I wish we could have a little bit more in our bag of tricks. Like, we got out of control, we got makes us tired. I think they could do something, even though this was the super form, I guess. I don't know, who cares about the categorizations? But we could do something like Revice with like Barad Rex and Volcano Rex, which was, I don't remember there being a huge deal about them being different on a power level wise, but one was like fire, one was ice. You could do something like that, where it's simply that you kind of have two mid-season forms, but the reason that you have two of them is they have different abilities. That would be fine. Or you could do something like, in this case, obviously, we have this situation where Iron Gotchard, he's only using the one Chemi, but it's like become level 10, so it's hyper powerful. But maybe you have a situation like this where he would have a form that was only using one, but it's like weaker. And it's kind of more about it being cool because he's determined to use this weaker form until he can get a new form. I don't know, I just think there could be more stuff with it. It is a pretty cool form despite the large, you know, train arms, although it is used creatively sometimes. And I do find it funny that even though Hoto obviously has more power-ups and stuff like that, how much of an emphasis there is on like, oh, we need Hoto, but he's tired and he can't go out there. It reminds me both of like in Ranger series when all of a sudden once a 6th Ranger debuts, they're out in the field like, we can't do it without gold. Like, dude, you had like 20 episodes where you didn't need this idiot. It kind of reminds me of that because it's like we went, what, over a dozen episodes with just Hoto, and now we have 2+ riders. I'm like, I don't think we need him. Not to mention he's always getting his ass handed to him. He's actually not that skilled. Especially in this episode, it's funny because he goes out there and he does lose, and he definitely jumps the gun too fast. Like, Rin gets knocked down once, and he's like, oh my god, I have to get in there. But he gets beaten up, and then when Rens Dad comes in, he's like lecturing the villain and saying, oh, you're not winning because you don't understand. You're abusing the power of the Chemi. You need to learn to work with him like Hoto. He was just winning against Hoto. Why are you lecturing him about his failure? He was just beating Hoto. So we are doing that stuff, but before we got to the Wind stuff, the only other thing we were doing was a little bit of Minato's backstory about why he betrayed them. It goes into his time at the academy, which almost shows the academy as like a full functioning, like Hogwarts-esque academy with a bunch of students, rather than an underground thing with like 4 people, which is what I was hoping for when the series started, is kind of having a setting where alchemy was known to the world, and it was having academies and like more of a different world change, kind of like the Shinobi academies in the Kamen Rider Shinobi miniseries. But anyway, it kind of goes into when Greyon betrayed them, that he had like killed another student, that his whole future was ahead of him, and like all the destruction he caused. And it was a little confusing because in the episode before this one where Wind debuted, he said, or they made it seem like he was doing this to sort of get the students off the board so that they aren't hurt like his past friends were. But then in this episode, Latch Cheese or whatever her name is, was like, I thought you were doing this to toughen your students up. Because he does get defeated last week and he loses the driver and very generic speeches about come back to a sensei. It rang hollow for me, I'll be honest. I mean, between Hoto's performance and just, I don't feel the bonds between them, and I don't think they really need him to teach them anything. And I'm a little disappointed that this story might be wrapping up soon, because I did like his turn, and I almost just wish it was him becoming a straight-up villain. He works best for me as Dread. Now Dread seems to be going back to being this pass-around system. It was admittedly funny seeing a little girl transform, and she used the unicorn form, which is funny because you usually associate, like, you know, little girls like unicorns. And it made me think, if they were going to do Dread as kind of a shared form, it would have been kind of cool if each one of the villains had their own Dread form. But anyway, we'll see how that wraps up. It was one of the most interesting parts, but it's definitely seeming generic with all that going on right now. Also, I brought up Rens Dad earlier. He was the one that gave them the power-up thing they needed for Iron Gotchard. I thought it was Legend because I'm still waiting for him to come back, and that was kind of something people speculated because of some of the visual similarities, which I guess I fell for, but I guess this kind of makes sense. But he's kind of back just for this episode, and he transforms into a rider, which I did not expect them to shoehorn this in. This seemed kind of random. It definitely even more makes it feel like this era is a bunch of like reworking and stuff. I mean, at least with Rin and not that this is bad, but with Rin and Valvarad, they were already on the canvas, and you know, I kind of expected them to probably become riders at some point with the way Rider's been going, but this definitely feels like, oh my god, we gotta get more excitement, more riders in there. And the costume is overall, it's kind of a mixed bag because it's pretty cool, but also just feels a little bit off. Like some of the proportions and color just feel slightly off. Maybe it's because, I mean, even though gold and silver is kind of overused in tokusatsu nowadays, that they kind of have like a almost darkish yellow color rather than the gold for the striping, which makes it feel like cheap and unfinished. But I don't know. I don't hate it. I do kind of like it, but it just feels kind of off to me. But he gets a debut here, and then he leaves immediately, so he'll probably be kind of a reoccurring thing, because he just debuts and fights, and then he gets stabbed in the back by Greyon, but it turns out he's doing like a chemi projection like Luke at the end of The Last Jedi, and so he's not dead. But that was definitely a nice twist. And I have to say, we seem to be heading towards this interesting, not end game, but like end game of this current story, because the whole idea is he's gathering the level 10 cards, Greyon is, to open up the gate, the Darkness Gate in the Ouroboros world, and we're heading towards that, and that sort of storyline that's been teased. And first of all, I have to say it's funny. Obviously, we've been bringing back the level 10 stuff recently with like 10-liner, but it also is funny that it almost feels like they are picking up a dropped story, because they made such a big deal about the level 10s when we debuted Rex and UFO, and then it felt like we kind of dropped that as we started to debut more forms, like, you know, we got Flame Gotchard and Daybreak, and then the other two new riders, and it almost was like, oh, I forgot we had level 10 material on the desk, let's use that. So it feels kind of weird to now be going back to that now. I thought that was kind of funny. But also, like, it definitely feels like we're wrapping up a lot of the core story we've been teasing from the beginning in regards to the past, and this sort of opening of this gate, and then Rens Dad coming back, and it feels like we're going to reach a conclusion to this, and it makes me interested to see where we're going. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not like, oh my god, I'm so invested in Gotchard now and I'm not theorizing about it in my off time. But I'm being entertained by the show, I would say, except for Hoto. But I am interested by the fact that it seems like a lot of the core story we've established from the beginning, which I assumed would take till the end of the show, because especially when the show first premiered, it was very by the numbers. So I was like, okay, this is the type of stuff will be happening at the very end of the show-ish. But it seems like we're reaching an end of that now, so it makes me curious where we're going to go after this. Maybe feeling a little bit like Drive in the sense that they kind of ended some plots early and then had a new era. So I am curious to see, because we have a little less than half of the show, but we have a pretty decent chunk ahead of us. So presuming that within this next arc we kind of wrap up this long-running arc we've been building to, I wonder where it's going to go after this. So I'll admit I'm pleasantly surprised that it's been entertaining, and they've taken a few twists and turns I didn't expect. Like, I honestly did not expect, even though it was like a golem or whatever, for Greyon to take out Rens Dad at the end. But anyway, that's it for my review for this. I will probably be back next week to talk about Platinum Gotchard, but what did you guys think of Iron Gotchard debut, Minato's past, and our new Kamen Rider Wind? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.